Hi, I'm Veronica, and this is my human design experiments. This is episode 2, where I talk about my environment, which is mountains active, and everything that I've learned so far in my personal experiment. So I started to learn more about my environment a little over a year ago, maybe about a year and a half ago. And at the time, I was living in an apartment on the first floor. And I would come home and I would open my door, and the first thing I would think was just like, I hate it here. It was, I thought it was going to be a great apartment. It had high ceilings. It was in an old church that was renovated into apartments. But it was on the first floor, and it ended up being more like a cave. I did not have a lot of natural light, so it was pretty dark in there. And I just had a lot of issues in that apartment in general. But when I started learning about mountains and I reflected on the current space that I was in and the previous spaces that I had been in, I realized how important it is for me to be on a second floor or a higher floor and not just on the first floor. So my previous apartment, I was living in a garage apartment. I was on the second floor, and I knew nothing about my human design environment then. But I loved that apartment so much, and I look back and I reflect on that apartment, and while it wasn't the nicest place I've ever lived, wasn't necessarily the best, no central AC, no central heat, but I would be, in my apartment. I would look out the window, look at my surroundings, look down at what was below me. It's so much natural light in that apartment, and that was a place that I feel like I could really get perspective. And then going into this apartment on the first floor in the old church, I just thought, okay, this hopefully should be a great space. High ceilings, it's an old church, it's exposed pipes, it's a cool vibe, and I ended up hating it. And luckily, after about 8 months, I was able to move 2 floors up to the 3rd floor, to the top floor. And at this point, I did know, I think a little bit before, maybe about a month or 2 before I moved upstairs, is when I started to learn about my environment. And I got up there and I just felt so much better. I had even higher ceilings. I had so much natural light. And again, it's like I could be up above other things and look out my windows, look down at what is happening around me. And I felt like I could breathe again living in that 3rd floor apartment, where I felt suffocated in the 1st floor. And when it comes to environments and spaces, when I reflect on, I feel like I'm very, very sensitive to my environment. And when I go to coffee shops, for example, to work, I often need to be in a space that does have those high ceilings, is more open. I prefer a lot of natural light. If it feels more like a cave to me, I just feel like I can't concentrate. But, and I know environment is so much more than, it's not about the actual mountain. Maybe for some people that resonates. For me personally, I have never been a mountains person. I mean, when I go to the mountains, it's beautiful, I enjoy it, but I've always been a beach person. I've been called to the beach. Don't really have a desire to ever move to the mountains. Not opposed to it, but I prefer to be near water, as in an ocean. So yeah, the actual mountain is not important to me. And I know that human design environment is so much more than the actual mountain or the actual cave. I mean, it's funny because I think in human design we talk about, or people in the community tend to talk about, like, if you're a mountains person, moving to the mountains, but I don't really feel like you see anyone recommending a caves person to move into a literal cave. So it's kind of funny that we do that. So when it comes to perspective, getting perspective, you know, the mountain is kind of up above everything else, getting away from everyone and everything. And when it comes to gaining perspective, if I'm going through something, if I'm experiencing something, I do feel like I need to get away from that situation to really get a clear perspective. Whether that is, you know, something going on relationally, I don't even know if that's a word, maybe I just made that up, but if that is going on, something going on within a relationship, something going on at work, wherever, whoever, whatever the dynamic is, I need to pull my body away from it, out of it. And when I look back on certain things in my life, you know, I think about, you know, a previous relationship, and we had broken up and we were still living together, and it was like I felt awful. And I also knew, and this is way before, probably 2 years before I learned about my environment, I just knew as soon as I get out of this space, away from this person, I know I'm not going to feel this way anymore. I know I'm going to feel better. It's like my body knew I needed to get away to get a clear perspective, because I was being so influenced by the energy of that person and that situation. And I will say sometimes it is really hard for me to get a clear perspective on things. I can think of, you know, when people have maybe like wronged me, and at first maybe I don't realize the extent of the situation or what they've done. You know, I don't necessarily think it's that bad, and I will maybe tell someone else about it, and they'll be upset, and then they'll be more upset than I am, and help me realize that this is something that I should be upset about. The more I pull myself away from the situation, the more I can get a clear perspective. You know, Vanessa Henry talks about mountains people getting dragged into shit. Certain things being beneath mountains people, and mountains people getting dragged into the shit. And that is something that I really relate to. I feel like that does happen to me often, a lot in work environments. And, you know, one of the previous jobs I had not too long ago, I entered into it thinking it would be a mountains type environment. It was elevated, nicer, higher end. You know, I thought, this is it. This will finally be a good work environment, a healthy work environment. And instead it was the opposite. I felt like I was being dragged down into things. Just so much drama and bullshit that I felt like was beneath me, in the sense of like, I don't care. Why are we caring about this? And, you know, I do have certain aspects of my design that I think cause people to come to me and tell me things, openly share with me, and maybe that plays an influence as well, of people telling me these things that I don't really care about, or that, at least that I don't want to be involved in. You know, Ra talks about mountains people being able to see everything. They're up above on the mountain. They're able to see everything. But in order to see everything, we have to actually be on the mountain. And times in the past I haven't been on the mountain, at least when it comes to work environments. I think that's all I have to say about getting dragged into things as a mountains person. At least that's all that I want to say for now. So getting perspective, let's go back to that. Smoking. Ra also talks about how mountains people may tend to be smokers, and it's because smoking can allow you to get a breath of fresh air, which maybe is the opposite actually of what smoking is, but allows you to step away from the situation, and also allows you to get a different perspective. And for me, smoking weed has allowed me to get that different perspective. It has been a way for me to see the bigger picture. Often, if I am feeling like I can't see the bigger picture, if I'm feeling really down about something, maybe my perspective is not aligned. Smoking allows me to get that perspective, see the bigger picture, and really ultimately, maybe I don't end up with the answer or a clear path forward of what step to take and where to go, but I end up with the feeling and the knowing that this is happening for a reason. It's okay. This is what's meant to be happening. It provides me with, I want to say, clarity and reassurance. Breathwork has also been a tool for me. After my mom passed away in 2019, I guess about maybe the beginning of 2020, sometime around then, I discovered breathwork. And then when the pandemic first happened and we were in the lockdown, I was just doing breathwork like every single day. And it allowed me to process so much grief. Honestly, I think about that time and the tool of breathwork and how powerful that was for me. And I think that really, really made an impact on my ability to process that grief. I think that I would probably have a lot more grief stuck in my body if I didn't do so much breath work during that time. And as I'm saying this, I'm like, wow, I really need to do breath work. I have quite a few emotions probably that I need to work through some more that breath work could help with. It is not a daily tool for me now, but I do meditate every day or most days. And a big part of my meditation is focusing on my breath, bringing awareness to my breath. I'm not doing necessarily a breathwork practice, but I am focusing on my breathing. And I think that has really helped my mental health. So I also wanted to talk about being a mountains person and being a little picky. Wanting things that are elevated, having my preferences. And I know that definitely some of my preferences probably come from being an open taste determination, and having things that are in season for me, having my favorites, being kind of selective. But also as a mountains person, I do want things that are elevated, that are nicer. I'm picky. And, or as my boyfriend would say, I'm bougie. And it's like I would rather, a lot of times what I have found is, if I buy something and maybe it's not the elevated version that I want, I may end up returning it and getting that elevated version. I'm kind of left feeling like I'd rather not have it than not have the version of it that I want. I'm picky with the food that I put into my body. I'm picky with the makeup that I put onto my body, the products that I buy. I tend to want things that are more natural, organic. I'm picky, I would say, with, the way things look, depending on what it is. And I would say learning this about mountains people, that mountains people have this kind of elevated taste, elevated preferences, or picky about what they like, that for me has been really, what's the word I'm looking for? Validating. Learning the mountains people are selective, that maybe they want things that are elevated, they're a little picky. For me personally, that has been really validating and kind of freeing. I think that has helped me let go of some of the shame around, like, I like something or I want something, but it's got to be this specific thing. And I think in the past, it's, I haven't wanted to voice that maybe for being, for the fear of not wanting to be difficult. But knowing that, that is who I am, that is my design, that's how I am built, how I'm made, has helped me to, allow myself to voice those wants and those needs. So one last thing that I wanted to bring up is hiding in a cave versus being up on the mountaintop. And transference doesn't necessarily happen on the design or the body side, but we do have that relationship with that other environment. And for me right now, what I have been observing and trying to learn the personal difference for me is, what is the difference between fleeing or hiding in the cave versus hermiting, because I am a 6'2" profile. And I think what I've come up with so far is that I feel like when I'm hermiting, I am doing activities that are more nourishing and healing for my body, or spending a lot of time maybe alone, but still working on the things that are important to me. Whereas I think when I'm hiding in that cave, I'm kind of checking out and zoning out. Like my relationship to smoking can put me in that cave if I'm using it as a tool to kind of numb or check out or escape, which I have definitely done in the past. And I can personally tell, I'm very aware of when I'm smoking to get on the mountaintop and when I'm smoking to hide away in the cave. And it feels like for me, when I am in that cave, it's when my body, my nervous system is like dysregulated. And it's almost like I can't cope. Often, even the things that are simple that I know will make me feel better and help me, like, it's just like I can't do them, or I don't want to do them. I have a really big resistance to doing them. So that has been an interesting observation over the last few months. I think that that's most of what I wanted to say about Mountain's environment and my experiment so far. This video made me realize that I should probably end this and go do some breath work. So I'll be back next week to talk about my determination.